focus on a different theme each time. Our theme this time is intelligent design on trial, lessons from It's Miller v. Dover, creationism trial. Really wonderful victory that's going to be paying dividends for us for ages to come. And what we're getting a chance today to hear are samples from the witness reports, background from the people who really were the leaders in getting this started, and then later this afternoon, view from someone who reported from the trial, and then a general panel discussion. So if you weren't here this morning, everyone will be on the panel for a general discussion later on as well. So what we have now is Brian Alters from McGill University, who's also a member of the Education Committee, and his expertise, as you know, is evolution education. This is what his research is all about. One of the arguments you constantly hear from creationists, from intelligent design creationists, is that teaching intelligent design, teaching critical analysis, is going to pedagogy, right? This is going to be something that will increase critical thinking and good for students and so on. And that was obviously a very important point in the trial to have that was Brian's role in this. So he'll talk about really good pedagogy. Brian.
Thank you. I'm going to drive Nick crazy because I'm not standing behind the podium with your camera.
I wasn't even watching.
What is taught to children? It seems to be very important. Science is obviously important, but it gets very important to the general populace of what you're going to teach their children. Extraordinarily important. You know the trials started back when, continued on with creation science, monkey laws, finally found constitutional, 87. People talked about it. Soon after, intelligent design was formed, and if you've been here through the meetings earlier today or reading the newspapers or anything such as that, you know that intelligent design is found to be unconstitutional. What does all this have to do with? What is taught to the children in public high schools? That's the focus. That's the real focus of all of this. What are you teaching my child? That's what it's all about. Board's decision, breathtaking unanimity. Rob brought that up this morning also in one of his. We'll come back to it, but it seems that we all tend to like that phrase. The effect of the IB policy will be to, from my perspective, and the perspective of most science educators, I would say the overwhelming majority, in fact, I haven't found one to be yet that would disagree, professionally trained in science education, that the Dover policy would have the following effect. Require teachers to use poor pedagogy. We can talk hours about this. Short amount of time, but it's just terrible pedagogy. You consider this. Remember how it went. You know, the teachers were supposed to read this sort of a disclaimer before they started doing it on evolution. Teachers said no. So the administrator comes in and reads it to the students. So here's the pedagogy. They're just about to begin something called evolution. Yeah. I think most of you have heard it here. Kind of the fundamental theory, the overarching theme, the glue that holds the biology course together. You know, kind of not a trivial point in the curriculum. But an administrator walks in the room and reads these paragraphs to the students, and then leaves the room. And something about an alternative scientific theory to evolution. Something alternative, scientifically alternative to that fundamental overarching glue that holds all of biology together. And there's no further discussion about it whatsoever. The principal came in, or the administrator came in, and gave a mini lecture. Read it. It's a form of a miniature lecture. It's been crafted. It's not good teaching. In fact, it's very bad teaching. This is horrible teaching, too. Talking at people is very bad teaching. It doesn't work very well. Hearing and seeing is a little bit better. We'll get into some better pedagogy. But there are so many ways that the Dover policy is bad pedagogy. Intelligent design is bad pedagogy from beginning to end. We don't have time to go through it, but let's look at a few other things here. The effect of the Dover policy would be to require teachers to disregard findings of the scientific community. Oh, that would be a good one, wouldn't it? For public school science teachers to disregard what the overwhelming majority of the scientific community has to say about the so-called intelligent design of science. Require teachers to disregard recommendations of their national and professional science teachers associations. Science teachers, a lot. Tens of thousands of them across the United States belong to these official associations. They would have to disregard what they have to say about about this whole issue. Contradict teachers' professional preparation and professional development. When they're in university becoming to-be science teachers, they don't hear anything about how to teach a form of religion in their science classes. They don't hear anything about methodology for teaching intelligent design along with evolution in their classes. They don't hear any of that. Of course not. They don't learn it. They go to their annual conventions, whether nationally or locally by state or whatever. You cannot find a session in those where you can learn as a teacher about how to better teach evolution and / intelligent design. They don't exist. Evolution certainly, but not intelligent design. It goes on and on and on. Improperly prepare students for post-secondary science education in secular schools. Sure, if you learn an alternate scientific theory, and then you go into a secular university, you're in for one big surprise. And hopefully it won't be too embarrassing for the poor child when they get there and they raise their hand. Yeah, but what about intelligent design, the other scientific theory? So these are just some of the bad pedagogical effects and other effects that they have on particularly the teachers. Teachers aren't trained in this sort of thing generally. The effect of the ID policy would be to, let's change it from education for a moment. Let's say it's medicine. Let's go through the same identical thing, but for medicine, shall we? Require MDs to use poor medical practices. Require MDs to disregard the findings of their medical community. Require MDs to disregard recommendations of their national medical associations. Contradict MDs' professional preparation and professional development. Improperly prepare students for pre-med programs in secular schools. No, we would laugh at this sort of thing, right? It's essentially what the Dover policy is asking us to do. Policy statement. There will be no other discussion of the issue, and your teachers will not answer questions on the issue. This is my favorite part of the whole thing from a pedagogical point of view. This is just so comical in so many different ways. But again, allow me to reiterate for a third time here, a fundamental theory. Overarching theme, the clue, evolution for biology. Now we have this other alternate scientific theory. We're going to tell you about it. Administrator wants it, reads about it. Pretty good. Evolution not so good. This other one, this other textbook, go check it out. So forth, and then tell the science teachers, oh, and if the child wants to discuss this alternate scientific theory, no, we'll not talk about it. It's a secret science. It's a secret science. This is great. This is unheard of. And this defies pedagogy. My pedagogy is how to get somebody to learn something better. They come ask questions. Go, no, I can't discuss it. It's a science class. I'm sorry, I can't discuss this science. The judge wrote, and I was so happy, Dr. Alters explained that a reasonable student observer would conclude that ID is a kind of secret science that students apparently can't discuss with their science teachers which he indicates is pedagogically about as bad as I could possibly think of. This is, my other expert witnesses have gotten far more press out of this than I do, rightfully so, of course. Unfortunately for me, this was the one sentence that was most cited by reporters. Because it truly was. I couldn't think of anything worse, not even anything close. Would it make things better, they asked me on the stand, would it make things better if we had some additional books in the school library or wherever the appendix and people was that the intelligence book, along with that had contributors that were arguing against intelligent design? Would that make things better? Would that improve the situation? No, it makes it worse. It makes it worse. I didn't like my answer, but it makes it worse. Now you're telling the students to go check out this book and maybe these additional books. These additional books have some of you, possibly, some people in this room most probably, have written in there about evolution. There's citing people who've written about evolution, the positive sides, obviously, of evolution, the science of evolution. And now the student can't even discuss that with their teacher. They can't come back and say, hey, I read this in that book because it's being juxtaposed in the same book with intelligent design. It's a strange type of policy, to say the least, from every angle you can think of. The defendant said, it's not teaching. It's really not teaching whatsoever. It's merely making students aware of it. This is not teaching. Don't talk about pedagogy. Don't talk about teaching and teachers and all that. We're simply making students aware of it. baloney. Baloney anyway. First of all, if you don't want students to learn about this so-called alternative scientific theory, why are you reading it to them in the classroom? Some of them contended during my deposition, well, was it like telling them, making students aware that the bathroom's closed down the hall, for this week. So you're not teaching them that. You're just making them aware the bathroom's closed down the hall. Well, yeah, but the bathroom isn't in the school curriculum in the science section. It's not one of those things you want them to learn about and take away from their school day as far as the curriculum. Bathroom closure is not in the curriculum. That's not what it is. So we have this alternate scientific theory, the evolution, and we're merely making students aware of it? No, you're giving a mini lecture. You definitely want them to learn something. You want them to learn evolution, got some problems, intelligent design, alternate, legitimate scientific theory, and a location of book. You can learn more at the school. There's a lot of stuff they were teaching students. And again, it's not good teaching. It's not good teaching. It's bad teaching, but it's still teaching. Virtually anyone's definition. This is teaching here. Again, like I'm saying, this is bad teaching. We don't model this, but this is teaching. Biggest threat, I'm going to leave the trial for a moment here. I see the biggest threat as possibly being, and I don't think it will happen. This is kind of a doomsday scenario. I don't think it will happen, but from my pedagogical point of view, I think the worst thing that could happen, the biggest threat for an anti-evolution in any form, is to get enough teachers into the classroom. I meet a lot of teachers that teach in biology classes who are there because they feel it's a mission field. They feel evolution's dead wrong, and if it's not them teaching it, it's somebody else. And they cover the material to get through it ethically. They've covered the material and their legal responsibilities, but they do it in a very bad methodological way, in which they're very sure, and I'm very sure, that the students will learn very, very little about evolution in the class. So if they could get tens of thousands of those sort of teachers across the nation into the public schools, it's an interesting strategy. I don't think it can happen, but I think that would be the biggest threat, because that can happen. And in so many ways, teachers can signal it, and this is gravel science, even if they don't audibly disparage evolution, there are methods you can use to just make it as dry, as boring, and cognitively least effective as possible, so that when they leave those classes, So, talking out students is the effect I'm doing here right now. What is some essential elements of the pedagogy? Questions should be raised, or problems posed that require students to act on the basis of prior beliefs. Now, you say, prior ideas, you say that, well, that sounds so logical. Yeah, but most people don't do it. Most university professors, when they teach science classes, teach as they were taught, teach us how they thought, well, maybe it works best. Haven't really read a whole lot of research on, most of the time, on what's effective in pedagogy. So you come in and just talk to your class, basically. So you're telling them up front what is, and then maybe you have them go to a lab and try it out. Maybe they do some cookbook stuff, maybe they do something else, maybe they read some problems in the back of the chapter and do them, or whatever you have them do. This is the opposite. This is first find out, sort of diagnose what their misconceptions are first before you tell them anything. Those actions should lead to results that are ambiguous or can be challenged or contradicted in their minds. Alternative ideas or more effective procedures should be proposed by students and the instructor, honestly, and the instructor. The students aren't going to come up with these brilliant, accurate ideas in the spur of the moment. So you see, you build up that cognitive dissonance. Education ease here, psych ease. You build up that, wow, what I thought, what I predicted would happen isn't happening. It is wrong. What is right here, and so forth. And then eventually get to the point of now you're telling them, now you're letting them realize what's going on, and so forth. This is quite different than just walking in and go, I'm going to give you a lecture today on such and such, and continue at that point. Alternative ideas, or the more effective pedagogic procedures, should now be utilized to generate new predictions or new data to allow you the change of old ideas or the acquisition of a new idea. This is overly simplistic. My colleagues in science education would shoot me if they hear how quickly I'm going through this, but this is the gist of it. This is the skinny. You might want to think about it or look into other sort of areas. Again, an ineffectual teacher will just talk after students, make it as dry as possible, continue it through. And probably 6 months after the course ended, even students who got an A in the course will probably be getting an F. For those of you who haven't seen the films of a colleague of mine at Harvard, Phil Sadler, he made some films, it's over a decade ago now, at Harvard and MIT, but they're still just as good today. No one can believe that students can get A's at top universities and really not carry with them the change of the conception. Really not have that really take effect and change their common sense, if you will, about how things work. So he's at Harvard, so he decided to take a camera too, because no one believed this. They're skeptical like you are. Education's a bunch of fun. I'll teach students. Well, you're all at the top of your classes. You did very well. We're talking basically here average student type of stuff. So he took the camera out, Harvard Day, graduation, goes up and says, on camera, why is it hot in the summer and cold in the winter? And you hopefully have seen this film. It's called Private University. If you haven't, watch it. 50% of Harvard graduates can't tell you why it's hot in the summer and cold in the winter. They all have, well, if the sun gets closer, it's warmer. If the sun gets further away, it's colder. That's how it works. Nothing to do with the angle of the sun whatsoever. And some of them, of course, took planetary motion courses at Harvard and other sort of physics and other sort of advanced courses. You'll be shocked. That's why he made the films. A few years went by, he was going to make another film, this time to do with physics, and Harvard was not, of course, overjoyed with this kind of film being out. So he immediately went over to MIT. So he took his camera crew up, it's all professionally done. And he's got this great clip of valedictorians saying, we are the most advanced science and engineering institute in the world. And the audience all applauds graduation day and everything. Then immediately afterwards, in their robes, he says, if I give you a battery, a piece of wire, and a bulb, you think you can make it light up? It's about 50%. No, can't do it. I don't think they can do it, but they're shorting it out right and left and everything, having one wire coming down going, I don't understand. And again, he asked, what sort of classes do you take? Well, one of them was just priceless. One of them said, I'm not an electrical engineer, I'm a civil engineer. So there are ways to teach, particularly high school students. Well, they will learn next to nothing, but the teacher has effectively covered the material. Doug in the audience, I saw him here earlier. Doug was responsible for a white paper put out by SSE 5-6 years ago. And in it, it's stated opposition to evolution is so vocal in the United States that it's a threat to federal funding of evolutionary research. Now, this sort of stuff goes on in the U.S. You know, the creation evolution problem has been going on for decades and decades and decades. We all know, and been experienced with it. I come from that funny country up north. That's where I live and work. Montreal. By the way, it's great to be here in the Deep South. New York, Deep South. Canada. So this intelligent design stuff made splashes all across Canada. All sorts of press. The trial made just as big or almost as big press across Canada. But see, Canadians, it is sport in Canada to make fun of Americans. It is. There's a show called This Hour Has 20 Minutes, and within the show, there's always this segment, or almost always this segment. It's one of the most watched shows in Canada, titled Talking with Americans. And they come over and ask me, well, do you think the Eskimos living in igloos up there, should they be subsidized with Canadian federal dollars, and all this sort of thing? It goes on and on and on and on, showing Americans ignorance about virtually everything. And so this sort of thing happens. The ID trial comes up, makes worldwide press, of course. So the Canadians, there they go again. It's the Americans. I can't believe this got up to a federal court. These sort of things can never happen in Canada. So I pressed the flesh all over the place in Canada, too, after the trial. I did my thing. And the one article that got the most, apparently, as best we can tell, the most readership in Canada out of the ID trial concerning me, not concerning the whole trial, just concerning me. But the one they liked so much, because it had Canada in it, was this one. The Overstatement Bonds, Even in Canada, by Mark Carter. End of the trial. He wrote, as part of it, and speaking of hurt feelings, you had to feel bad for Dover Superintendent Richard Nielsen and the rest of the defendants sitting in the gallery on on the defendant's side of the courtroom number 2, when Brian Alters, a professor of science education, expert in teaching evolution, started talking. It got ugly. The defendants appeared to be relieved when Alters took the stand and said he taught at McGill University. McGill is in Montreal. That's Canada. You can almost sense the relief among the defendants. Canada? How bad could it get? That's a great record. And then the good doctor started testifying so many words accused the school board and administrators essentially of child abuse. And he was right. Teaching intelligent design creation in business science classes wasn't just a bad idea, he said. It wasn't just bad teaching. It was probably the worst thing I've heard of. Way on again. Canadians love this. They pick out. It took somebody living and working in Canada to go down and straighten out those Americans. We can be relieved. It's only a Canadian. Oh, but it got ugly. It got worse. It went on and on. So that was one of the most popular ones in Canada. So Canadians were very smart. Americans again have the problems. Canada certainly wouldn't have anything north of the border, would we? 26% of it would think in Canada that intelligent design should be taught in schools. Globe and Mail is one of our 2 largest newspapers for the country. We have an evolution education research center in Canada. It's at McGill. It's got some props at Harvard that join on, and we do a little bit of research here and there on this sort of thing and get a tiny bit involved. And we wrote a little proposal wondering, does all the popularization of intelligent design, all the stuff in the media, and all the magazines and everything else in Canada have an effect, a detrimental effect, of course, on students' understanding of science, teachers, parents, policymakers? I want to measure that. We saw a big escalation at the center. Teachers calling in, parents calling in, museums even calling in, and so forth, asking questions about this alternative scientific theory known as intelligent design. So we went, wow, is this stuff affecting Canadians, just the popularization of it? So, science education in the United States, primary funding source is the NSF. Canada, it is not. In Canada, education, as well as in the United States, is considered a social science, but there, instead of writing to a social science institution, primarily most science educators write to NSF and get funding. In Canada, we don't do that. We write to the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. That's the largest such funding organization for this sort of thing. It's a federal organization. So we wrote to them for a small grant, a very small grant, we think it was 40,000 Canadian, so US dollars $28, something like that. Canadian US exchanges. So here's some of the things in the proposed research. Evolution is the foundation which all biological sciences are built. Leading scientific and science education organizations are resoundingly reject intelligent design as science and strongly recommend that it not be taught as science. The purpose of this research is to measure the extent to which the recent large-scale popularization of intelligent design theory, form of creationism, anti-evolutionism, is detrimentally affecting Canadians' teaching and learning of biological evolution at all levels. Okay, and a lot of other stuff in there, but this is just some little snippets of it. We got a letter back March 8th, just slightly over 2 months after Judge Jones delivered his final verdict / opinion about the Dover case. Okay. Here it is. I can't read it. I'll blow up parts of it too. Dear Dr. Alters, the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council has completed its consideration of the application which is submitted to the Research Development Initiatives Program. I regret to advise you that the Council is unable to offer you the support that you have requested. I, like you, I think most of you probably this, have been occasionally turned down by grant proposals. It happens, right? Okay. It's certainly happened to me. I feel great that it's just not me. It happens all the time, actually, to me. The decision rests upon the recommendation of the Multidisciplinary Adjudication Committee which studied your application. The Adjudication Committee reviewed each application submitted on the basis of the established evaluation criteria. The committee found that the candidates were qualified. Thank you. That's nice. I agree with that part. However, the judge of the proposal did not adequately substantiate the premise that the popularization of intelligent design theory had detrimental effects on Canadian students, teachers, and pioneers and policymakers. Nor did the committee consider that there was adequate justification for the assumption in the proposal that the theory of evolution and non-intelligent design theory was correct. It was not convinced, therefore, that research based on these assumptions would yield objective results. This is the largest federal funding agency for science education in Canada. If after you're over and you just feel like you may want to write the science advisor to the Prime Minister, I just happen to have the rejection letter, where to write, and the people's names on the committee. They have not changed their opinion on this. It made a lot of press. It was reported in Nature, of course, all over the world in a great number of venues. This is one of our nation's most popular newspaper across the entire nation. There were others, of course, pressing it up. The executive vice president of the federal organization, trained as a chemist, I read that somewhere, I don't know what exactly that means, reported in the Ottawa Citizen, the equivalent to the Washington Post newspaper, that concerning the denial letter, that the professor had taken one line out of context. I was guilty. Open to misinterpretation. Anyone who thinks that is bad is misinterpreting it. A fellow of the Royal Society of Canada came out on our side and said concerning the spin that the federal agency was putting on this was, I can only characterize this as an evasion, if not say a prevarication of a White House press conference. You see, the Canadian, you want to call something really bad, it's Parliament. You mentioned Washington. It comes up in a variety of ways. The Canadian Society for Ecology and Evolution wrote a very critical open letter that's on their website. The American Institute of AIBS wrote a very good letter, and members of the president here. Even the American Sociological Association wrote a very critical letter to the funding agency. No one wants the funding reversed. Now keep the money, what they said in their letter. The federal funding agency can't tell the difference between science and religion, and they're adjudicating science education proposals for a country. We got problems. This in part wrote, it is shocking to see evolution and creation as replaced at a level and treated as credible alternatives by a panel representing a much respected federal funding agency. This affair has already caused a great deal of embarrassment. Some have been playing off on the word shirt. They're shirking their duty and so forth. AIBS wrote in part, SHRC is the first government granting body to give the appearance that it questions the importance of evolution, and there's deep concern with the implication in the committee's review that the religious concept of intelligent design is scientifically viable alternative explanation of natural phenomena. ASA wrote in part, to express serious objection to the impact of the statement made by SHRC committee. At the very least, the statement implies that the rigorous concept of intelligence is a religious concept. The religious concept of intelligent design is on parallel footing scientifically with the scientific concept of biological evolution is therefore a viable alternative explanation for natural phenomena. So, they got a lot of pressure. Hundreds of scientists wrote in from around the world. I was copied on a lot of the emails. So on April 24th, they came out and do you think we retracted the statement? Of course not. The denial letter was poorly drafted. We regret the wording. And the Royal Society of Canada came to the rescue, and the president there said, indeed, the letter was contorted. So that was the best we got. No removal, no rejection whatsoever. Investigative reporters went after the committee, and they found out the committee didn't have one scientist on it. So SHRC retracted it? No, they haven't. So the denial letter is so shocking, and the worldwide news. Approximately the majority of the Canadian colleges and universities wrote letters in. 600-member Society for Canadian Society for Evolution open letter on their website. 5,000-member AIBS, which of course, as most of you know, the umbrella organization for like 200 other scientific societies representing about 250,000 people, wrote a very damning letter on their website. Sure. 14,000-member ASA wrote this. Other organizations are currently investigating this, so of course one would expect that a social science institution would bow to advice from scientific institutions about what is science and what isn't science when adjudicating science education proposals for a country. Wouldn't you? The Royal Society of Canada, yay, they came and finally said something about intelligent design. Intelligent design is the religious belief in evolution is the only credible scientific position that is defensible. Other theories or positions such as intelligent design are not scientific in basis or nature. Yay. And that came out. So of course, immediately, the federal organization retracted that and said, no. Our big question to this day still is, as I stand here, as you can tell, I'm still a little annoyed with this. Why not? Why not? And it's still going on. It's a bitter battle. I bring it up here to say that things don't just happen in the United States. The federal trial that happened here has federal problems north of the border also. Breathtaking inanity is on both sides. Next time you talk to a Canadian and they start saying, you guys, just bring this incident up. It'll put them right into place. Canadians know about it. So solutions in general, in my humble view, legal decisions protecting evolution education, I think that's obvious. And that's what's been going on today and continue to go on today. And that's the purpose for this whole seminar today. Very important. Implementation of effective pedagogy. Jeannie mentioned this just at the end of her talk. Teaching evolution well, teaching evolution better than we have before. It's so important. It's amazing how many students can take a course, get a passing grade or even a good grade in a course. 6-8 months later, as if they never had the course whatsoever. Protection of evolution and evolution education research from ID sympathizers. It's more of a Canadian issue right now, but it also pops up in various places, of course, in smaller ways all across the United States. If we're going to do more research and try to figure out what's good pedagogy for evolution education, we need to be protected from intelligent design sympathizers who hold the purse strings to research funds to figure out how to do that. It's important. I think I'll stop there with the book one. Thank you. And these are just some pages with the rejection letter and where to write the person if you want to take them later.
Questions?
Yes?
Does it matter that evolution has narrative evolution is simply been a verbal one as opposed to narrative narrations, which is largely a visual history?
Yeah, the question was, isn't evolution primarily a verbal narrative versus more of a visual one for a lot of people and so forth? Yeah, it is. Evolution seems to be, from a pedagogical point of view here, I'm talking about, counterintuitive to most people from the get-go. What something came out of the ocean turned into me? And everything you can think of, even some of the terminologies Jeannie brought up, theory, just the use of the word theory, and just trying to get over that with students is absolutely, it's only a theory. And it goes on and on and on and on. And a lot of it is word issues. A lot of it is word issues and verbal. That's very much part of it. It's counterintuitive, which means that it's even harder to change common sense concerning that, because their common sense is, no, something just didn't crawl out of the ocean and turn into humans. No, come on, I got better than that. That's impossible. So it's even more difficult. So students can go through classes and get A's. They go to MIT and get A's in their physics courses, and go to Harvard and actually figure out why it's hot in the summer and cold in the winter, and then on graduation day it's all gone. And we have to figure out ways to change those basic conceptions where it becomes logical, giving the norms and needs of the scientific community, that is the most logical conclusion. It's complicated. It's complicated by so many different matters, and it's complicated. We talked hours about this, but even so many students, people they look up to don't like evolution. You go and you say, hey, I don't understand trajectory in a physics course. You barely get through, you memorize some formula, you just plug and chug, and you got out of the damn course, right? And you pass as a biologist or whatever. And but no authority figure is casting dispersions on trajectory. It works. So students go through chemistry classes, and maybe they didn't do so well. Maybe they did do well. But even if they didn't, they say, hey, chemists know what they're doing. And, balancing those chemical equations. You take a physics course, and even if the student didn't do so well, and they come out and they go, hey, yeah, F equals ma, things fall at 9.8 meters per second squared, I apply it, okay, those physicists know what they're doing. You've got a large percentage of students coming out of biology classes that go, yeah, I passed the class, yeah, you got a good grade, but evolution, I think it's got some major holes in it. Major holes about the occurrence of evolution. I don't buy it. And that's shocking, it's surprising. So yes, it's incredibly difficult, and for even more reasons than that. It's a synergism of so many things coming together. Culture, respect, the verbal use of it. You can't just run into the physics laboratory and boom, there. Hey, it did fall at 9.8 meters per second squared. Get rid of equipment. Yes?
To what extent do you think this problem is because something like evolution may be taught once? With so many things now being added to biology curricula, and the over-specialization, that they're just not seeing evolution past an intro course, and so they don't get that second place, or if they screw it up.
Which can I ask you one question just so I clarify? You're talking about university students here.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I think any high school teacher who teaches biology should have to take an entire course in evolution, past intro bio and so forth, an entire course of that. I think that should be required. I've been saying that for a decade. Too many institutions are listening. Absolutely, that should be done. As far as the high school teachers go, what's particularly comical to people like me, pedagogical people, are when Jeannie was shown just prior to this that they want us to teach, and discuss the evidence against boom, 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 all these theories, cell theory, heliocentry theory, plate tectonic theory, evolution theory, and all. There's no time in a high school biology. But talk to a high school biology teacher the next time you're around one. They can barely cover. I don't want that word. All I can think of is a cat. Just because you covered it doesn't mean you taught it well or anyone learned. But anyways, covered the material. They can barely get through what they're supposed to get through, and have the students learn what they need to learn to move on without having to take the time to go through every single thing like that and say, well, let's look at the alternative point of view. Obviously, we want to increase critical thinking, and clearly we don't want to do it around evolution. There's too much. There's just a ton of religious baggage, obviously connected with it. It's cultural and everything else. Start having some critical thinking. There are some good questions within evolution to ask. I don't know, tempo and mode questions, maybe. What things gave rise to another, where there's some serious debate going on, which one of the two or something like that does, but not over the occurrence of evolution. Yeah, I agree essentially with what you've been saying, that, yeah, there's more and more specialization, it's getting more and more difficult. I would like to see the high school biology teachers be required to take an evolution course at the university. And some biology departments don't even have a specific one, but I think they should, of course. Jeannie.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, I was visiting at a university, which I will not name, having a very pleasant conversation with a geneticist who told me that he doesn't teach evolution in his course because they have a course in evolution for majors. And I'm going to go you one better. Yes, every department should require a course for their majors, but evolution should be in that genetics course and every other course, that cell biology course, that biochemistry course. Don't just save it up for the evolution course, because there's an awful lot of other students taking your classes. One of the things that I encourage societies to do, and I'll encourage SSE to do, and GSA and some of the other societies who are concerned about this, is to have a web page where you put some of your best teaching ideas, lessons, examples for how to bring evolution into all aspects of biology. Don't just save it for the evolution course. Every course you teach should include how evolution, every course you teach should include why Dobzhansky was right.
And by the way, you wrote that nothing in sense, and nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. That was a title to an article written in the American Biology Teacher, the largest journal on the planet, to high school biology teachers, and to some other teachers too, some books, high school teachers also, but primarily high school teachers. That's where that famous quote came from. Mind about that?
So time for one more question if there is one.
Yeah.
You've already partly answered this question, but I'd be really interested to hear what any of the symposium participants have to say. heard a discussion among some, actually leading evolutionary biologists about whether, rather than trying to keep ID completely out of schools, what we should be doing is inviting some sort of a debate, but not in science classes, but something like a philosophy class, to get into how we know what we know, what's the difference between religion and science, etc. And I think the predominant view, at least in the discussion I heard, was on balance, that's a bad idea. But I'm wondering what someone from an educational perspective would say to that.
Yeah, the question was, what about discussing, again, watch my fingers, that controversy, where it might be more appropriate, of course, not in science, because there is no scientific controversy over the occurrence of evolution, but maybe in a philosophy class, maybe in a social science class, after all, it's a social phenomenon going on. I have to caveat this way, I have to say so many warnings about that, because it would have to be done by somebody knowledgeable on what science is and what science isn't, to explain the situation to the students. And I run in the realm of science teachers, so I don't know how prepared the non-science teachers are, let's say at the high school, to be able to do that sort of thing. It worries me, it concerns me greatly that that will be brought up, and that teacher will not be prepared to adequately when the students start saying, well, why don't the scientists then include it? Why doesn't the science teacher and so forth? That the teacher may not be philosophically and scientifically adept enough to be able to discuss the nature of science, the nature of philosophy, demarcation issues, and so forth. But, well, that's not science because it's really a form of religion, and religiously adept enough. So I'm not going to give a blanket no, because I know some teachers who could handle it very well, but I don't know about the majority. It concerns me greatly that it might cause more harm than good. But it certainly doesn't belong in the science classroom, that's for sure.